my PTSD and anxiety with Kiko. And with my second, I had a lot of postpartum depression and rage. My boss, after I had Lepa, was super understanding and was able to have a really honest conversation with him about the transition back to work, mental health, and how that was going. And there are a lot of worker protections. So I went in, had a meeting with my boss, knowing like these are things that I can ask for.
Hey, welcome to the Momma Lounge podcast, where we get real about the beautiful chaos of postpartum. I'm your host, Camille Perkins, and I'm happy you're here. We're all about authenticity, the highs, the lows, and the unexpected messy middles. We'll find strength in our faith, embrace our diverse experiences, and love without judgment. So, grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's chat. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Momma Lounge podcast. Today, I have here with me my super wonderful good friend, Jolene. She was one of my downstairs neighbors while I was living at student housing at BYU. And she just became really, really good friends with me and my husband. When I got pregnant and then eventually had my baby, she supported me a ton. Something that me and Drew always talk about is how good of a cook she is, because there were a couple of times where she dropped off food and it just was so good. We actually wrote down a couple of her recipes. Our favorite one that we're making this Friday actually is called, we've called it Jolene's Butternut Squash Cinnamon Chili. It's so good. We could always tell when she was making it downstairs because it just smelled good. And we're like, we know what Jolene's making today. So yeah, we just really appreciate how good of a cook she is and how kind she's been to me and taking care of me when I was a little bit in my postpartum phase. So I just really appreciated her, and that's why I wanted her to come on, because she has unique experiences of her own and has lots of good words of wisdom to say. So I'll let her introduce her family and kind of what she likes to do.
Yeah, so my name's Jolene, and I'm a mom of two boys. My oldest, his name's Kiko, and my youngest, his name's Lepa. My husband, his name is Weaning, and he's from Tonga. And we met while we were at school at BYU, Hawaii. So I studied intercultural peace building. It's kind of like conflict studies. So like study peace, but really we studied conflict. And so, yeah, now we're here. I really enjoy weightlifting. For a little bit, I taught prenatal yoga at the community here. I just got like my overall yoga certification, so that's exciting. I love movement, so I love moving, and that's good because I have two boys, so I'm always moving.
Her two little boys are just so rambunctious. We love them so much. Kiko is the cutest spirit. He runs around and loves to say hi, and sometimes he'd run into my house. He's so cute. He's so adorable.
Oh man. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So
yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. Our topic today is going to be kind of about Jolene's experience with going right into work after having her oldest boy, and what that was like postpartum, and kind of maybe the struggle that she had, as well as maybe some things that she liked about it. We'll see where it goes. But first, before she dives into that, I just want all of my guests to always share just kind of their birth story, experience, and just like what their postpartum life was like kind of immediately after. So go for it. Tell us Kiko's birth story.
Okay. Yeah, so with Kiko, I had severe preeclampsia. So it was like late onset. I had like almost no symptoms until I was 39 weeks, 5 days. And so we pretty much like went home from the doctor's appointment and then grabbed our stuff, went straight to the hospital. It was just like a long, hard birth. About 24 hours in, I had an epidural and I was just feeling like super exhausted. So
wow.
got induced like Monday night, and then Tuesday night I had an epidural, and then Wednesday morning I was just kind of like it had failed. My epidural had failed. I don't know when timeline, like when you're in labor, is like this. So
yeah,
around midday Wednesday, so it was like almost 36 hours after they started my induction, the nurse came in. She called for a C-section. But at that time, I had felt my body like bearing down, like I like felt my body like pushing, and so I couldn't. I don't even remember saying anything. I just remember like staring at her and being like, "Are you serious?"
Like I've done all this work.
Like this pressure feels like maybe now. So my husband was like, "Maybe check her one more time," and so then I performed a cervical check, and then like Kiko was born like 3 minutes after that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like literally flew, which is like, if you know Kiko, he's always flying.
Fits him perfectly.
I'm like, it's like life mimics art, but like birth, like mimics all the birth. So anyway, he was on oxygen a little after he was born, for about a week. And so we had like,
Okay.
they didn't call it like a NICU, but I don't know what to call it. It's just like a nursery with high tech stuff. I don't know. But so he was on oxygen for a little bit, and so that was a really tricky experience. With Lepa,
Yeah, that was probably really hard.
it was. I feel like it just kind of like set off this, I don't know, really rocky start to postpartum. And with Lepa, I feel like I tried to be a lot more intentional with like the choices that I made in my pregnancy and leading up to it. I knew I wanted to go like unmedicated. I think that there's power in choice. Like no matter your birth, there's power in like you choose how you want to bring this child to the world, while still knowing that it could go any which way. So with Lepa, I was induced again for hypertension, so I didn't go preeclamptic, but that was early in the morning. Waves came in, like my contractions came in around like 11 a.m. I had a midwife instead of an OB, and my doula came around 2. And that's when things are kind of intense. The birth team was really good at like giving us space and support. And so it's almost like a black and white experience with Kiko's. Kiko's, I felt like really alone. And with Lepa's, I felt super supported. So at 3 p.m., I started like lose track of time with Lepa's birth. I had my eyes closed almost the entire time, and then got grunty. And then it kind of went back, like it was like almost pushing. And then I opened my eyes, and like there were so many people in the room. And then I feel like my body just like got shy. And so around 7 p.m., we're getting to the point where we're like, okay, this could go long. So my doula had mentioned to maybe like rest, or maybe do a cervical check. So we opted to do cervical check, and like my waters were right there. So I chose to have them broken, and he came like within an hour. And I remember like my midwife let me catch Lepa, which is like a really special experience, especially after having Kiko like pretty much taken from me when he was born, because he needed that extra support. And so anyway, I mentioned like I love movement, and like movement got me through that labor, and it wasn't an option with Kiko. Anyways, it healed a part of me that was like hurt for a long time. Anyways.
Right, because you got to do it the way that you wanted, and even if there were some things that didn't go to plan, it felt more like you got to choose along the way and stuff.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of like value in having a choice, even if it's like between two choices that you don't like really love, but as long as you feel like you're an active part of it. So I struggle to like mention Kiko's birth without Lepa's, because I'm like so grateful for both, you know, like they both brought these beautiful humans into my life.
And beautiful is the correct word.
Yes.
They're beautiful boys.
Thanks.
They really are. They're so cute.
Wow. Thanks. So yeah, that was probably a lot longer than 5 minutes, but
oh no, it's fine. I think talking about it is good. I have so many questions now, so we'll get to everything else later. But with Kiko's, you were in a hospital. With Lepa's, were you also in a hospital? Like, what was the setting?
I was. I had done a lot of research with hospitals in the area, and also ended up like switching providers at 30 weeks pregnant with Lepa, because I was like, something doesn't feel right. So let me try this one. And like loved, like, thank you, Jolene.
Right. Let's go.
Yeah, I was in one for both, and they were both inductions. And I think a lot of times you get like a bad rap. But you can have a beautiful birth story with like any kind of birth, you know. You can also have a hard birth story with any kind of birth.
Yeah. And I also think it's also valid to say that sometimes when you have a birth experience, the baby's beautiful, your relationship is beautiful, but sometimes the birth experience can be awful. And I think that that's okay to say too, because I don't know, sometimes it's validating to say like, yes, like it is beautiful because you brought a baby into the world, but that doesn't mean that you have to say that your experience was wonderful and amazing. Like you can also say, you know, yeah, my experience was rough. It
Mhm.
sucked.
Mhm.
And I love that you have the contrast, right, of you and of Kiko's and Lepa's, of being able to say like Kiko's was harder in certain ways, and I'm glad that I had Lepa's. That's really cool.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
right.
it's because you made some decisions. It wasn't because you got lucky, right?
Yeah,
You took some time to research it and stuff.
yeah. And I think like
That's way cool.
I wouldn't have treasured and been so grateful for Lepas had I not had, like both were. I
Mm-hmm.
About what you said, where they're like, "Oh, beautiful baby." I had a really hard time after Kiko when we brought him home. They're like, "Oh, at least he's healthy." When like at first he wasn't, right? And I'm like, it
Mm-hmm.
stung so bad because I'm like, they're like literally having flashbacks, and they're like, "At least baby's good," and you're like, "Yeah, at least he's good." Oh,
No, I'm glad you said the word flashbacks. Let's talk about that because this is something that I want to talk about eventually, and maybe this is where I talk about it, is no one talks about postpartum trauma.
mhm.
No one mentions that postpartum trauma happens for quite a few people, maybe not everyone. But oh my gosh, did it happen for me? And it sounds like it happened for you. What experiences did you have with postpartum trauma? What kind of trauma do you remember having postpartum?
A lot of just kidding. Not really. I remember the first, like, within the first couple days, I was like laying on the ground. I'd done some like yoga stretches or something, which is actually interesting coming from like the yoga background ish place. I was doing some stretches on the ground and I just like laid flat on my back. I was probably a week and a half postpartum. So, like, they weren't crazy stretches. Like, I was just like, oh, my back hurts, right? Like, and I finished stretching and I remember my mind just going to a really dark place and like started replaying some really hard moments from my birth with Kiko. What I did was I dissociated. I didn't know the term for that at the time, but I completely dissociated laying on the ground. And my mom kind of was like, "Hey, like, are you okay?" She was staying with us. She was quarantining at the time since COVID. And I'm like, I was just frozen. And I don't even remember what I told her, but I started crying after. And so that was like the first kind of like, whoa, I do have some heavy stuff to uncover and to work through after his birth. And there was another time, this second time kind of prompted me to like go to therapy because I was sitting in a place that was like pretty special to me. And I had just like I think I went on a walk and so Keiko was in the stroller and I was just like staring at the ground and I had this like incredibly intrusive thought. And then almost right after I was like, I need to go to therapy. And it's really hard when you're postpartum to like make an appointment, find somebody to watch the baby if that's what you want to do. A lot of my therapy appointments post Kiko, I ended up taking him with me. And so I think I had a lot of like shame around how my birth experience went and a lot of grief around it with Kiko, which is like I mentioned, Lepa's birth kind of like healed a part of me that hurt for a long time, like that. And I really loved breastfeeding Kiko because I was like, oh hey, like my body's kind of working right now. when I felt like it, when I when I felt like it wasn't like during his
Right.
birth, and like looking back, I'm like, Jolene, that's so silly. Like, of course your body's working, you're living, you're breathing, you're here, you're moving.
Mm-hmm.
But that was how I had viewed my experience and kind of processed it initially. And so I think those are the two like main experiences that I come, but there was a lot of other just like things that I realized retrospectively were most certainly trauma responses. And I think I also navigated a lot of anxiety with Kiko. And I think
So much anxiety. Oh my gosh. No one talks about it. I was so anxious. Nobody
yeah,
talks about it. It's wild.
I remember going to the gym, like I went to the gym recently and I overheard this guy, I forgot my headphones. I overheard this guy's like talking about his wife just had a baby. She's like, he's worried about this and this. And I'm like, she's so valid. Awesome. Be supportive. um,
Yeah, you gotta be there for her. Oh my gosh.
yeah, there's so much because you're like, I have this new life that I need to take care of. And I know close to nothing right now. So it's a lot.
It is so much because not only did you just go through a traumatic experience, but like you said, you're taking care of a new life and you don't know what you're doing. I had a lot of people be like, oh, like your mama instincts will come in. No, No. Like, I don't feel like I had like mom instincts come in until like, I don't know, maybe a month or so later. And it's not like they just show up. It's more like you're just slowly learning and eventually you kind
Right.
of figure out your baby. But man, like there's a reason it takes a village to raise a baby. There's a book that I'm reading right now called To Have and to Hold.
Mhm.
You would love this book.
I
Have you read it?
I love it. Yes.
Yes.
So
And I love the chapter that says it takes a village to raise a mother.
mhm.
And I just think that that's so cool because honestly, the baby needs lots of help, but it's because the mom needs lots of help and the mom needs to learn how to be a mom. I feel like for me, my anxiety was like so heightened. And I didn't realize it was anxiety, but I think that's what it was. I was so nervous when anyone else was holding Janie. I was so nervous when anything would happen to me or to her if she wasn't sleeping, if she was sleeping too long, if someone said something, I'd get weird about it, even though it had nothing to do with postpartum. I was worried my friends didn't like me.
You're like,
So
go for it.
you bringing food and giving it to me on my porch that one night, I remember being like, at least Jolene loves me.
It's my love language. I'm like, here, it's food.
Yeah. So
Wow.
helpful because postpartum I was just so insecure about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, post edit Camille here. As I was listening, I just wanted to make sure that my friends who are listening know I am so grateful for all of you. I wasn't saying that my friends weren't there for me, but more like my postpartum anxiety made me super insecure, and it was easy for me to forget my friends and think that I was alone, even though I wasn't. I had so many of you around me. And of course, now looking back, I see each of you, and I'm so grateful and I love all of you. And so really, I just hope that sharing this will help other moms who might feel alone or think that their friends don't like them anymore. Just know that it's easy for anxiety and depression to kind of give us those thoughts. But know that your friends really are there for you and that they really do care for you. And even if you're not a postpartum mom, but if you struggle with anxiety and overthinking things and thinking that people don't love you for small reasons, please know that you are loved and you are cared for. But anyways, I just wanted to put that in there. We can go back to Jolene. Well, thank you for sharing. I feel like I could talk about that for hours. Okay, so let's talk about your working experience postpartum and just like kind of start from the beginning. So at what point did you go back to work?
With Kiko, I went back to work after 6 weeks and I was remote for about a month and then went back into work full time. No, not full time. It was 30 hours a week, which I feel like it's like pretty much full time. So
It's basically full time,
I'm like, I'm here
especially as
6
mom.
hours of the day.
Yeah.
So with Lepa, I like milked the 12-week option. I was like, okay, I'm going to do 6 weeks paid and 6 weeks unpaid. And I could get on a whole soapbox about like our mamas need better. Babies need better when
Oh.
it comes to like paid leave. It's like, I don't know, like we talk so much about the next generation, the next generation. I'm like, well, what about those that are like literally carrying the next generation? And then like nurturing them for those first key years, like we need support there anyways. So with Lepa, I did like 12 weeks and then went back to work and went about a month remote too, and then back like full time. So he was born mid-September, went back to work end of November, and then in office beginning of January.
So you've gone back to work remote. What was that like? Because it's interesting. You're at home and people might say, oh, like remote, like that's so much easier. But like, what's your opinion on that? How was your experience with working from remote?
There's a reason I don't do home workouts and I like going to the gym. I think equally, there's a reason like I like going into an office. I mean, like, I know working from home is great. And I love that I had that option because there is something special about just like being there, especially early on when they're taking decent naps. I don't know. Not I
Yeah, it
don't
depends
know.
on the baby.
Depends on the baby. I'm like, what? Not so much. But yeah, that like blur was really hard. And I know a lot of people experience that with like COVID and working from home when they had kids at home or, you know, other things that they need to take care of. It's hard for people to compartmentalize, I think. And some people thrive when they do it. So I feel like for me, it was I spent a lot of time like sitting on the couch, feeding baby on my laptop. Um, and like I felt like I was always doing two things at once.
Yeah.
And kind of worrying in the back of my head, like about performance. Cause I'm like, am I going to make errors? Like, like, my baby's like, can't touch the keyboard during email or whatever. Like, I feel like that
Mhm.
was really tricky. It was also tricky because my partner was in school at the time. He's still in school, but and so like childcare was really hard to access, like an affordable childcare option. And so like a lot of times it was just like, okay, I'll take care of it, like even if I'm working from
Mhm.
home. And yeah, remote is hard. It's two jobs like at the same time. And there's not a lot of like time blocking. Yeah, really long answer, but it's a great option. I think it's fantastic. I
Not for you though.
Yeah, it was to an extent when I had like the baby was napping or things like that. Like that was really nice, but it's also just really hard to juggle both at the same time.
Mhm. Were there ever moments where you felt like you couldn't be like the mom you wanted to be because you had to work at the same time, or like how do you navigate those thoughts? Because that's something that I've thought about is like I want to be able to make money eventually for our family, but I also worry that maybe I won't be able to be as supportive as I want to be. So like how do you navigate those ideas and thoughts?
Oh, I love this question. There's a lot to be said about expectations, I think, especially when you're a working mom, stay at home mom. I grew up seeing a lot of my role models be stay at home moms. And my husband is an immigrant. So at first he couldn't work besides for the school. And so like that was the only option. It was like, well, obviously I have to bring in some more money for our family because student jobs, like, they don't pay great. Um,
No, they pay awful.
and so like that was the only option for our family at the time. And then I come to find like I really enjoy working and like having
Mhm.
that outlet. Like I feel like my brain is busy. And so like it's nice to have a place where my busy brain can go. And so like this expectation that in the sense of like we picture this like stay at home mom as like a homemaker, home cooks all the meals, goes to like PTO and those typical stay at home mom things. But someone visited me early postpartum and they told me, there's zero ways to be a perfect mom and a billion ways to be a good mom. And so I really carried that with me. There are so many ways that I can still be a good mom. My oldest is going to preschool now. It's like he doesn't need a homemade lunch every time. Like, roll up
Right.
some ham and crackers and send him with it. And so, yeah, I had this expectation and picture of what somebody should be, but that's like having that expectation of yourself when you're pinched on time, when you're pinched on resources, on bandwidth. I think I came to a point more with my second than with my first. I tried to do a lot more than I was capable and had bandwidth for with my first. I was really good at saying yes to things that I didn't need and saying no to things that I did. And it was flipped with my second. Like I was like, okay, yes to all the things that I need, yes to the help, and no to the things that like I don't have time for, I don't have energy for. And so like setting realistic expectations was huge, especially
Mhm.
with my second, and like also boundaries.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like I'm leaving the office at 5 p.m. and no later, things like that. Or I can't, no, in terms of like pumping while at work, it's like that time is blocked because I had a lot of like student appointments in the role that I was at. And like I had student appointments and I'm like, hey, this time is full. Can I book it? And I'm like, sorry, I'm not available then. And so I think that was big. I kind of strayed away from your question, but I think the biggest thing was like setting realistic expectations for myself. And
Mhm.
also accepting that like I am a good mom as I am, you know, like you are a good
Right.
mom as you are. And what they need is you. They don't need like a fancy home cooked meal every night or as
Constant attention.
exactly like be present when you can be present and do your best, which you're probably already doing.
Yeah. Give yourself more credit, right? Yeah. That's awesome. For childcare, once you went back into the office, what did that look like? Especially since you were trying to save money.
It was we maybe this is not super funny, but I always joke that we'd play hot potato with Kiko because he'd be like, we're like, okay. Next, we had some friends, neighbors in our apartment building that we were close with, and they offered to watch him for an overlap time. So typically it'd be between me and my spouse, and we pretty much like didn't see each other from like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. with like
Mhm.
school and work. Besides handoffs and that little overlap that our friend helped us with, and we did some sort of like exchange, like we'd have them over for dinner sometimes, and they're still super good friends now. And so
Yeah.
that was how we did it. Like you said, takes a village. It took a lot of people
Yeah.
and a lot of
So many
understanding.
people. Yeah, and I think it also takes courage as well. I don't know about you, and maybe it's just different because you had a busy life and work to get to, so maybe not so much. But for me, I was so, again, anxious and like territorial that I remember a month after Janie was born, it was the first time I had ever been away from her for longer than 10 minutes. And I like bawled my eyes out, and I was letting my mom babysit her for like 4 hours so that I could go to a worship service. And like, I look back now and I'm like, my baby was fine for 4 hours. Like, she's just fine. I'd given him pumped milk, like, she was totally safe. But I just remember being so scared and afraid to give my baby to someone else that I love and trust for longer than 20 minutes,
Yeah.
you know? I don't know. Did you ever have any experiences of like really struggling to let people do that or not really?
I think at first, yeah, like entrusting somebody to stay with your child is so hard. Like you're like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, what's gonna happen? Is this gonna happen? Do they know this? You know? And so we had picked someone that like I really, really trusted.
Hmm.
And they weren't watching them alone, they were watching them with their spouse. So that helped me. It also was like helpful that I was like, okay, my husband's there. But I also like missed a lot of I feel like I missed a lot of moments that I was sad about. I was like, I don't want to take him
Hmm.
to the playground, in the afternoon. And like I was always working in the afternoon. So like that had to be saved for the weekend. But he has a really good like my oldest has a really good bond with his dad and like always has been, and I think that that's like a beautiful thing that came about from it. But yeah, like anxiety when you're trying to ask them, I can't even imagine like scouting out daycares at like 6 weeks postpartum. Like so much power and props to the women and families that do that because that's the option for them, because it's so hard to like know. And I think that comes back to like when you're trying to like navigate instincts, like do I have instincts, is this my intuition, like
Hmm.
really hard to be like like is this the right daycare or should I do this daycare. And so that's like I'm grateful our situation was our situation, that I'm also like hold a lot of space for ones that look different, and not to
Hmm.
mention how expensive it can be for like dual income families to juggle childcare. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be really rough. She's crying right now.
Speaking of anxiety.
Yeah. The good news is after 8 months, I mean, I'm 8 months postpartum right now. I'm doing quite a bit better. Like,
I'm so glad.
we've been doing a little bit of like crying with her in her crib so that she can learn to put herself to sleep, which is going awesome.
But
And she's like slowly learning, and we've been doing like in small chunks. Like, I don't do any longer than like 10, 20 minutes because I just can't. But
it's overstimulating sometimes. Yeah.
yes, it's so overstimulating.
If it makes you feel better, Lepa doesn't sleep through the night, so
Yeah, see, there you go. Yeah, no, Janie now wakes up about 3 times a night,
so
but she used to wake up like 5 or 6. So we're doing a lot better than we were 3 months
progress is
ago.
progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How often does Lepa wake up?
Well, I think 4 times. He sleeps a good long stretch in the beginning, and then it's
Hmm.
like boop, 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 like early morning hours.
Oh man,
So
how old is he again?
he's almost 18 months. So don't buy my sleep course, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Is he waking up to eat, or what? Is he just like want comfort?
Yeah. So I'm still breastfeeding him, so a lot of times
Yeah.
it's hard to have the bandwidth to like, I don't know, like wake up and let them cry it out. I feel like the put down is easier for me than like the wake ups. Anyway.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. For a long time, when Ginny was waking up every 2 hours, I was like, well, why would I sit here laying awake while she's crying when I could just put her to sleep immediately? And then I can go to sleep. Like, I will get more sleep feeding her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Totally.
it took a long time to eventually be to the point where I was like, okay, well, if Janie can
Long.
put herself down, then maybe like she'll sleep longer. And we did what's called night weaning.
Mm,
I don't know if you've heard of that before,
yeah.
but that's been working for us, and she's gone to 4 hours. I don't know if we'll get past that though, because she's pretty stubborn. So
Everybody be so different.
yeah, every baby's so different. What were we talking about before this though? Oh, anxiety, because she
Right.
was crying.
That's right.
Okay, so one of my questions that I had asked was, what was one of the hardest things about working when it came to motherhood? Like, what maybe like, because it sounds like what's helped you a lot is telling yourself, I'm a good mom where I am, right? And I'm glad that you've got to that point. When you were in the thick of it, though, what was like your hardest internal struggle?
I think I had heaps of guilt about
Mm-hmm.
like so many people around me had like dropped out of school to be stay at home. And I feel like either way, you're like, if I'm a working mom, I have guilt for not being stay at home. If I'm stay at home, I have guilt for working. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
there's this mold that's like, you can never win.
Uh-huh.
And so I feel like that was really hard for me to like navigate guilt and see just like people leading like I want to say like a slower paced life with their baby. And I like wanted that. That was like really hard for me to be like, I want a slower paced life right now. To just like
Right.
soak up the little, little tones and like all those delicious things about the first year of baby.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard for me. Another thing that was really hard was, I think, the contrast. So I'd heard from, I think it was another podcast, and they were talking about, like, one day you're like pregnant and you look outside and somebody's walking their dog. And then, like, a week later, you're sitting in that same bed with your newborn, you're all kinds of sore, and you see that same person walking their dog outside. And so it's just like this grief of like, I just had a major life change. And from the looks of it, a lot of people around me, there's a lot of things that are not changed, at least like visually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really hard, I think, like navigating guilt alongside the grief of like how much my life had just changed. And especially in like a work setting where I'm like, okay, I have to like just pick right up, where I left off.
Right.
But you
As if nothing changed.
exactly, because like everything around me is kind of like not changed, but there's so much that just like changed within me and within my body and within my like relationship, like having to caretake for a newborn. There's so much that's unseen when you're postpartum. That's really hard to navigate. Like I remember going to the grocery store when I was like heavily pregnant, and people were so nice and they're like, go in front of me, like, and then I go to that same grocery store, and when I'm postpartum and maybe I don't have my baby with me, sometimes people are having a bad day and they say something insensitive or just like not the kindest, and like you're in such a fragile state, but people can't really see from like the outside that you're in a fragile state unless you're like actively with said newborn or baby, whatever stage of postpartum you're at. I think that was really hard to navigate and to kind of just like pick right up. I also think that like breastfeeding and pumping while at work is really hard. Yeah, like you have the same working hours. Like I'm still working at the time I was working an 11 to 5 shift with Kiko. With Lepa, I went back full time. So I still have the same amount of time, but I have to like squeeze in the breaks to feed my baby and still get my work done within less time, you know? And and like also some days less brain power because of how the night before went or whatever. Like glitching. You're like, Mhm. Mhm. I think there are a lot of things that were just like hard on both accounts. Like just the fact of going back to work with such a teeny tiny baby. And like I said, experiencing like all those emotions, right? Like guilt and like my life is so changed and yours is not. And yeah, there were a lot of like things that kind of stayed. I think one thing I really tried to do differently with Lepa was like saying yes and no that I mentioned earlier. And and almost like kind of where I was like, like scouting out providers and stuff for that birth experience, the second birth experience in the same way. Like I'm not like scouting out bosses, but I was like trying to like be better about like, okay, I'm choosing this, right? I'm choosing my times and blocking out those times that I pump. And also my boss after I had Lepa was super understanding. And I'm super grateful for that and was able to have like a really honest conversation with him about the transition back to work and also mental health and how that was going. And in line with that, asking for help. There are a lot of protections, worker protections for pregnant women and postpartum women and lactating, right? So that I think like I went in, had a meeting with my boss, knowing like, okay, these are things that I can ask for. Like I can ask for more remote time. And like obviously it's up to him to like say yes or no, or to like negotiate a different schedule that works for the both of us. But that was something that I did differently was I asked for help. And I think part of that comes with like awareness. Like I am struggling. Like this is really hard right now. And I don't know if I mentioned this explicitly before, but I had PTSD and anxiety with Kiko. And with my second, I had a lot of postpartum depression and rage. And I think part of that was like the timeline in which he was born. Like it was like right before winter. And so I just, from like 2 to 9 months, I was just like in the doldrums. Like it was just really, really, really hard. And so having an honest conversation with my boss and props to all the bosses that like are willing and able to do that and who know what the reality of postpartum is. I think that's something that's so cool about like the podcast that you're doing is like normalizing this experience because it's like not we should not just normalize it for moms or like to be moms, but like everybody. So those were some things that were different and just like the juggle was a little bit more like instead of 30 hours, I was working 40 hours, things like that. That were really tricky. So, mhm. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not a legal representative, so if I I think it's the Pregnant Workers Protection Act, and I might be butchering that name, but it also covers like postpartum women because that is related to pregnancy, right? So prenatal and postpartum mental health challenges is under the umbrella of those protections. And so one thing that I asked for was more remote days. I was like, I think I just need to be with my baby. I think part of my depression like came from being away from my baby for so much of the day. And also just like breastfeeding 3 times a day, like at work. It was just like really lonely. The workplace I had, it was like these pods. Sometimes I'd pump in my sometimes I'd pump in the pod. And like it was just like a lonely place sometimes. So
Yeah.
those are some things you can ask for. Obviously, like you talk with your workplace, you can talk with your boss if you're comfortable, or more with like the HR accommodations office to see.
Mm.
Because sometimes you're like, I just need something, but I'm not sure what will help in the situation or what's available to me necessarily. And so, in terms of like breastfeeding and lactating, you're entitled to a space that's not a bathroom. If your
Good.
company, yes, yay, and that's not going to be like a high traffic area. If your workplace has, I think it's 50 or more employees, they just recently changed it too. So I think, look, like research to the listeners,
Mhm.
research like pregnant worker protections and postpartum lactating. So I don't want to give
Right. You don't want to give
I don't
misinformation.
want to give misinformation, but like just know that you have them, and it helps if you go prepared too with like knowing that in the back of your head. And I think the word verbiage is like as long as it doesn't provide like undue hardship on the company um,
Mhm.
or like the team, then it's like an available protection. So
See, that's something that I feel like, knowing myself, I wouldn't realize that that's something that I could do or negotiate. Like, I just haven't really ever been a good negotiator. I've always just kind of been like, I'll just go with the flow, and whatever they do, like, I'll do for them, kind of a
yeah,
person, you know?
yeah,
Like, and if I hate it, then I'll quit. Like, instead of thinking, like, you know what, the situation sucks.
yeah.
Maybe I can talk to someone about it and figure it out, you know? And so
Mhm.
I think if you are someone who is avoiding going back to work, or if you are someone who is at work and have kind of a hard situation because of something like that, like Jolene said, research it and look for different rights or protections you have that you can negotiate with your boss and figure out ways to make it a better experience for you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and finish. Something that I like to do before I end is just ask if you mind sharing, how do you feel like God helped you with your postpartum struggles? I related to working or not related to working.
Well, I think there are a couple of experiences that like pop out in my mind. Obviously I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I think I mentioned before when I was like sitting with my baby in the stroller in a special place to me, something I would consider a sacred space, and having the thought of like going back to therapy, right? Like I feel like there's something of value in clinging to your faith in God and realizing that there's a divine to help you, and asking for help because there are people here that are like trained professionals and can help you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think too, in a lot of cases, there was a lot of times during each of my postpartum journeys where I really struggled to see God's hand. But when I look back, I can see like his fingerprints or like his
Right.
handprints. And I'm like, oh, like times when I felt super duper alone, and then realizing, oh my gosh, like, and people that were there to like help me and support me was huge as well. Like, I feel like a lot of things were like divinely orchestrated to be like, Jolene needs this support. um,
Right.
and you know, in terms of like the people that were in my circle, whether it was in the professional realm or, you know, just like day-to-day life, that was something that I was really, really grateful for and helped to strengthen my own faith. And realizing that like my mother's intuition was also kind of combined with like having spiritual feelings to do something or check on someone. I think that like was kind of like how he influenced me in my postpartum experience and like continues to do so. Like there are so many times where my rambunctious two boys, love them so much,
Mm-hmm.
ran like they could have really gotten hurt just now, but like, you know, thank you for protecting them just now. And so like I said, like it's like not always, you're not always seeing his hand, especially like with mental health struggles and when you're feeling like the world is a dark place and you're alone. But like in my experience, I could look back and see like, oh, he helped me there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a really neat faith strengthening journey.
It really is, because it's so difficult. And I know that there were plenty of moments where I felt during my postpartum journey a little bit angry, a lot of it angry
That's bad.
for what I was experiencing and for feeling like I didn't know that I was going to experience how hard this was. And also like how in the world, like, because I have a lot of support and I just can't imagine being a mother without support. Like, that would be so difficult. And so I just remember being kind of like, you know, how could this be part of God's plan? But then there were also, like you said, so many moments of fingerprints, or like moments where, you know, I'd look at my baby and be like, wow, like I love this baby so much and I know God loves them, and then I could feel God's love for them. That would happen every now and then. And something you said, like, you really believe in clinging to your faith, but also there are like people here who are professionals. Something that I learned once, or like that, I guess I feel like God kind of told me as I was thinking about this, you know, like the difference between faith and therapy. I just kind of had the feeling that like therapy is Jesus Christ, like another way that Jesus Christ can help us, right? Like, because Jolene and I believe that Jesus Christ suffered for our sins, and so, and not just for our sins, but for our pains and for things that we struggle through. And therapy is a way that God can allow us to access that healing power of Jesus Christ. It just takes a little extra work, right? And then that's another way that it can work. And so that's something that's been helpful for me, is like going to therapy is not abandoning your faith. It is very much...
It's the works.
Right.
Works.
It's the works of your faith, so that you can find that grace that's already there for you. And so I really liked that you shared that, because it just reminds me that for those who are listening, if you feel like you don't really see God right now, that's okay. Just know that he's there, and it's valid to feel alone and scared. And if Jolene and I have learned anything, for us at least, finding God has been through other people. It sounds like having support of other people has helped us to feel God there. And it can be hard to ask for help, but do it. Ask for help if you haven't already. Just remember that, I don't know, I hate saying those words, just remember this, because those are always the moments that made me feel like the most dumb. I'm like, well, of course I remember that, you know? Of course I know God loves me, but I feel this way, and that's fine. You're doing better than you think. God's there for you. And hopefully hearing our experiences and hearing Jolene's experience helps you to see that you're not alone. There are lots of working mothers that feel the same way you do. Or even if you're not working, if you're like me, I felt things like rage and things like depression and anxiety, even though I wasn't working. And that's fine. Like, all of our experiences are unique. So anyhow, we're just kind of babbling at this point.
Good. Thanks so much.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before you go?
If I could like go back and like tell myself something, it would be, or even like when I'm like, oh, I should have done this. I experienced this a lot when I had Lepa, when I was like, I should have done this the first time. Like, you know, things that worked, that I was like, I love how this worked out, or if it didn't work out, how it didn't work. But like one thing that I've heard that I would want to tell myself, whether I was criticizing my past self or like in my past self, right? That you're doing the best you can with what you have. And if you're thinking about past, you did the best you could with what you had. And that this life is like a journey. You're always learning and growing. If there's anything I've learned about postpartum, it's like this, it's a journey, and it's like a growth journey. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about your baby. You're like in pregnancy, literally shape shifting, but also like you continue to kind of shape shift in a way after. And so just to like trust yourself and give yourself a hug, take care of yourself. And in that taking care of yourself, if you're not able to take care of yourself, ask for help. Whether that be your partner, whether that be family, or like we talked about, therapy, reach out. And if you're on the other side, something I've always loved to do is just like take care of postpartum mamas, because I know how tough it can be. And so if you're able to do that when you have the bandwidth, like pass it on. And so that's something I just like to, I don't know, close with, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give yourself the benefit of the doubt and trust yourself. Yeah. Tap yourself on the shoulder and say, you know what? You're doing good.
You're doing good. You're doing your best. Your 100% looks different every day. So.
Yeah. I agree with that so much. Like my 100% 2 days ago was nothing compared to a month ago. Nothing.
Yes.
For sure. Okay, well, it was so fun talking to you, and I really want to catch up in person.
Thank you so much, Camille. It's been a pleasure.